Welcome back to another episode of Psychocinematic. Today, my guest is Matt Windon. Matt is a super kind cinematographer who is on fire right now. He worked on Dark Wolf, the Terminalist spin-off series, as well as Alien Earth. We had a fascinating conversation about his work on the two shows and how they shot things, some of the creative workarounds that they used, the special effects, all that. So without further ado, here's Matt. So you are a cinematographer and you have worked on two of the coolest projects I've seen in the recent months and really just like this year, probably. And that is Dark Wolf, the spinoff of The Terminalist, and then Alien Earth. And I have to say, if I were in your shoes, the opportunity to work on Dark Wolf would be surreal in itself, but then also to film cameos with Jack Carr, to film James Reese, Chris Pratt playing James Reese, killing someone with that Winkler Sayhawk tomahawk. And then even working on the Alien franchise in itself, all of it would just be like mind blowing for me. So, welcome to the show, and I'm curious what has that meant to you?
Well, Vic, thanks for having me. I'm keen to be a part of this, so thank you. I've been working as a cinematographer now predominantly on second units for the last 5 years. Firstly, with Alien, it was incredible to be a part of such an amazing show. They wanted to really harp back to the first Alien movie. Right from the get-go, when we were involved with second unit, most of my work is stunts and action sequences, and less with the cast, which is predominantly taken care of by the main unit. So we got to do all these incredible sequences, and they wanted to do the alien as real as possible, with as little visual effects as possible. So that's great for us on a second unit because you have the interaction with a stunt performer in a suit that's designed by Weta, that's interactive. And it meant that we could shoot these incredible action sequences Rob had designed and worked with Dana and collaborated, and we were able to bring that to screen. It was being part of a such an incredible like legacy, right? And being able to do that now with less VFX and more reality was fantastic.
When you're talking about the xenomorph, so yeah, they're definitely that costume. Is there also an animatronic version of that you guys are shooting with?
Yeah, so there's an animatronic version of the head. They had a bunch of different heads, I think three or four, and they were used for different situations. They could do different things with people that would control those heads. They could do different things, and we had different heads for some for lighting, some for what they were capable of, and so forth. And like you say, on the xenomorph, that was a fantastic way for us to work because we had the actual character there. We weren't shooting something that is not there, which is often the case
Mm-hmm.
on second units or visual effects work, right? You're using educated guess and some imagination to a certain degree on where that character is going to be in that space. But we had the real thing, and it was great, and it translates to, I think, awesome action on
Yeah.
screen. I worked with those guys. I shot second unit for the first three episodes, and we did some great stuff. The stairwell sequence in
Mm-hmm.
episode two, and things like that. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. I was very fortunate after coming off that show to be asked to join the Terminal List world, something that I had been a fan of on Amazon, but I had not worked with that team before when they were in prep in Budapest, where the show was based. I was asked to join them as second unit DP as well, which I was incredibly grateful for. It was an opportunity that came about. A friend of a friend recommended me, and I ended up being hired for the show. Incredible experience, to be part of the James Reese and Ben Edwards now story was fantastic. Having admired that series so much for everything that it brings, its originality and its authenticity to the military world. Um, I think is a huge strength of the show, and to be a part of that was great. I started on episode 1, and I went through to episode 6 for the 7th episode. Originally, a cinematographer slated to shoot that episode. Um, I ran into some scheduling issues, and they gave me my first break as a main unit cinematographer to shoot episode 7 when that happened. Um, I guess they were happy with what I did on second unit, and then gave me a
Yeah.
go. So I was very grateful.
If I'm not mistaken, you had told me that you are now for season 2 of the Terminal List, you are main unit DP, right?
Yeah, so they've asked me back for Terminal List season 2, again for episode 7, which is great. I'm one of 4, and we're in the process of shooting episode 7 at the moment in Morocco.
That's exciting. Well, so I want to go back to Alien real quick since we touched on that. In episode 3, since you shot up to episode 3, I'm guessing you probably didn't shoot this exact scene because it had like the main actors and dialogue. It wasn't like a stunt scene, but maybe the camera rig that they are using during the dissection of the face hugger. Is that like
Okay.
a white version of a red Komodo, like just with a top handle and like a couple other decorative pieces on there?
Yes, I think it was. It
Okay,
was a prop Komodo that had been dressed up to
gotcha.
to do something like that. But yeah,
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it looks perfect for the alien world, especially, just that it's white and whatnot. But it does crack me up that in this world, because it's very cyberpunk like. It's, however many hundreds of years in the future, like 1 or 200, I can't remember. It's clearly a different world because even that camera, like filming that dissection looks like shit. Like, like it's all
yeah,
like grainy and whatnot.
yeah. It works for the it works
Hmm.
for that moment.
Yeah, that spaceship crashes into the I forgot what it's called. That the trillionaires
The,
building.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Gosh, Prodigy. Thank you.
Prodigy. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that happens, and there's a ton of sparks throughout the ship. Do you know
Yeah.
like what was being used to create those sparks? Is that like dry sparklers, or what's going on there?
Yeah, no, it's the term that we used at the time is called broco, and it's at its very basic level, it's a welding tool, and they just the special effects team had a bunch of them running, and like the stairwell scene, for example, we went broco heavy. Well, it's throughout the sequences, like you say, since the ship crashes, but it's as simple as a welding rod hitting metal and sparking and raining
Hmm.
down. So quite often we would set the broco up above the frame, um, try and get as high as possible so you get a great amount of fall, and yeah, it's a welding rod.
Hmm. That's funny.
Yeah,
I,
it's pretty basic, but it
yeah,
looks amazing.
that orange is just very complimentary.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The amount of light, the amount of interactive light you get from that as a DP,
Hmm.
it brings the set alive, and the color is incredible.
Hmm.
Quite often, we found ourselves, and certainly in my case on second unit, what I found is you light the set with your film lights to what you think it's going to be. Quite often, I'm bringing that down on exposure, or um, it's lighting to a lower level than what you might do. And then when you introduce the broco, that's when the shots come alive.
Hmm.
So quite often we would set, because of the amount of light that comes out of them, quite often we'd set the lights, do the thing, but before we shoot, we'll do a broco run for lighting so that I can set my levels and work from
Yeah.
that, because it gives out so much incredible interactive light, really digs into the shadows. It's beautiful light. We shot in Thailand, and it felt like there's some things you can do there that
Hmm.
maybe you can't do in other parts of the world, but the broco looked amazing.
Yeah. So if you guys are shooting in Thailand, are those the island sequences that's like like a real location that maybe has like VFX modifications to it?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that came in later episodes after I left. As
Hmm.
far as the certainly the exteriors went,
Hmm.
they went to Koh Samui, I think, and shot there. But all the interior work is done on stage in Bangkok, and we shot the
Mm.
whole show there.
Yeah.
Incredible facilities, incredible crews. Set design was absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Everything that the locals poured into that show was was incredible. For myself on second unit, I had pretty much a 100% Thai crew, and from camera, grip, electric, and they were all first class, incredible people and technicians.
Every time the xenomorph is like attacking someone, especially if it's the suit version, it seems like the shutter's cranked up quite a bit to make it look pretty intense. And I'm just curious, what other things, if any, are there other camera tricks that you guys are doing to like really sell the xenomorph? Because like obviously the set design and the lighting, the acting inside the costume, like all of that is playing into it. But like for the camera's sake, like are you guys doing anything else to help intensify and I guess make it look as real as possible?
It's not much more than a little bit of shutter every once in a while. But
Mm-hmm.
quite often we'll shoot at like 22 frames a second,
Mm.
or 21 frames a second, which is a sort of frame rate combination. It's great for action, helps speed things up in the right places.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about going lower than 24 frames a second, but that would make sense just to really add to that jittery, Saving Private Ryan feel.
It's amazing what you like, 22 frames or 21, 21.5, anything like that. It looks great for action.
If you're shooting at that frame rate, do you still have the shutter cranked up, or is it still 180?
No, generally still keep it 180. Every once in a while, 360.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need some more light or to offset the effect, but generally stay at 180 or
Gotcha.
172.8. I can't remember what it was in that show, but yeah, something like that.
Hopping over to Dark Wolf and on this, topic of like intensity and realism with a show like Dark Wolf, it seems like things like muzzle flash, bullet casings, recoil, those types of things are super important, especially when you're trying to sell military type of weapons and how that stuff would be shooting. So I'm curious, do you know? I mean, I'm sure you do know. Are those always real muzzle flashes, or how often are we using VFX for that kind of thing? And like, is that just with blanks? I'm just kind of curious.
They want as much authenticity as possible. So the recoil, like you say, is super important. The muzzle flash, we live in a time where, because of things that have happened recently, you need to be as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is little to no ammunition as far as like quarter loads or eighth loads go. Most of the weapons are solid plug, so nothing can come out the end.
Mm-hmm.
And the muzzle flash is added by visual effects.
Okay.
Day exterior works fine for VFX. Sometimes in darker situations, there could be an argument that a quarter load or an eighth load will give you the interactive light out of the end of
Mm-hmm.
out of the end of the weapon, but still. Because of safety, that's very rarely used, and we can help that with lighting, as much as possible nowadays. So again, it varies weapon to weapon. I'm pretty sure on Dark Wolf, we did solid plugs most of the time, and a VFX muzzle flash. You still need to have the recoil right to sell the authenticity. So I'll have some blanks in there that give them some feedback.
Well, that kind of answers my next question because in episode 6 with the airplane, um, did you guys get a decommissioned jet, or was that something that the production designer like had built? Just kind of like the facade of a jet, and then how did you guys go about destroying it with the bullets? Because I was assuming you probably can't actually shoot at this thing because of all these rules that you're talking about and safety.
In that scene, like if you break it down, we have Ben and Landry and Mo and the guy approaching the Learjet firing. So that's all done with solid plug. There's nothing firing towards the jet, and the jet in picture is a real jet we had for a day
Hmm.
on the airfield. But for the other days, when you see the interior attack, that's a set piece.
Hmm.
It's basically a buck. It's built onto a trailer, and we could wheel it into position, put it at the right orientation, and do our scenes inside, and blow it to pieces. Basically, special effects rigged it with squib hits.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do, I think we did that once really. It worked so well the first time. We might have done a reset. We might have had a reset once and gone a second time, but yeah, we bunch of cameras on it, and the guys hit it. It's riddled with hits from special effects, and had some fun.
Yeah.
It looked amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did. It was crazy, and it was just such a like yes moment.
It's brilliantly done. And Paul Cameron directed that. I shot the second unit on that stuff. David Stockton was the DP on that episode, and we worked in tandem together. One thing I learned a lot from those guys, and that sequence is a good sequence to point out. It's one whole sequence, but we shot it at different times of the day because of the love for like cinematic feel and backlight, and you can't have that if you look one way and then look the other way, in the same time of the day. So
Right.
we would quite often do one angle, get the right light for that, kill it with a bunch of cameras, and then go and shoot another scene. Like we would go inside into the hangar during the middle of the day, and then come back and do the next piece, the other angles at the back end of the day by the time the sun's moved around. So you have a sequence that it looks seamless, but you're chasing the light, and it looks great for it, I think.
Yeah. So if you guys did do a reset in that interior, were there multiple jet interiors made for that scene? Then you just wheel them up and then.
No, there was one buck, there was one set, as it
Uh
were.
huh.
And I'm pretty sure we did one I think we did one, and then we did a reset, and that involves replacing the panels,
Oh, okay.
and
Gotcha.
replacing the seats and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
same set piece as it were, but they'll replace the panels. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
that takes however long it takes, and redo it, come back and have another go at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
went back and rewatched episode 7 since that's the one that you were main unit for, and was trying to think of questions. And right now, like I'm in the process of storyboarding for my next short film, which is in January. And there's a couple of questions that, as I was watching the way you were shooting, I like selfishly want answers for. I go back and forth in my head as to like I'm not sure which one I should do. So, for example, in the first 10 to 15 minutes, there's almost no static shot. Like everything is just like, even if it's almost static, the camera's still slightly moving. It's not until like 10, 15 minutes afterwards that you guys finally, unless I missed one, have a static shot. And I think the first one that I noticed was like inside of the CIA, when I can't, the bad guy, I forgot what his name is. He's looking at the wall, but it's like finally static. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious what makes you decide, and maybe that's like in the storyboard and whatnot, when you should go static and when you should even add just the slightest bit of movement.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Jed Haverford, and
Yes. Yes.
the moment with Rafe, and he's basically been found out.
Hmm.
Spoiler alert. I hope this goes out after 7, but
Yeah. No,
but
I'm gonna put it out after.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, Jed Haverford's he's been exposed by Ben and Rafe and their team, and I think that called for a moment of static and calm, and just to take in what had happened throughout the 7 episodes. And then once we step out of that moment, and his time is up, we get back into the moving camera.
Hmm.
Once we start at the farm again, and keep the camera moving, and to build that pace throughout the
Yeah.
episode. That's what it becomes about. That moment of, oh shit, it's up for him. That's over, and now it's on to Ben's story.
Hmm. Gotcha. So, for your own personal style, do you only use a static shot when it fits, like, pacing like that? Or are there other reasons that you might decide to use one?
I think in a show like this, it varies, and it can be a powerful tool. It will call for moments of calm, or an operator that is focusing on a subject, whether if it be a sniper moment or something similar, or versus a frantic moment or a pacing moment, and keep the camera movement. And we use that throughout the series, and we're using some similar ideas again this time round. But generally, yes, if there's some moment to take in, a static camera or a slow push in on key moments can be really powerful. We don't tend to do a lot of pushes, and you know what I mean. We save those moments. If there's a push in on something key, it's used sparingly so that it is important. Otherwise, we would tend to keep the camera static, and then once the scene gets on the move again, we move with the camera,
Yeah.
and tell the story that way.
That makes sense. And so my last short film that I did a lot of static shots, mainly because it's like a one man band kind of thing. Like I'm directing and I'm shooting, and I want to make sure that I'm nailing focus first and foremost. And then if I had visual effects, depending on how difficult the effect was, I wanted to make sure that it was stationary. But the effect that I feel afterwards when I'm watching it, and it's only like just now starting to set in, and it's been done for like, I don't know, almost a year now. And I'm just like, I wish I had more camera movement in there. Like, this shot I feel like needed something. And so I wanted to hear what you had to say about that since I'm now storyboarding for the next one. I just want to make sure that I'm, you know, adding enough to the story with the camera movements and not taking away.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. You don't want to move the camera all the time. You can do, people do it, and it can be effective that way. But I think for me and the style of the show, and Alien, it lends itself to considerate camera movements, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So it has a time and a place, and we're fortunate on these shows to have the producers give us incredible tools to do that with, and try and either be static in the right moment, or when the camera needs to move, we can develop, and we can usually develop that quite well because we have access to some great cranes or drones or whatever it might be you're using at
Yeah.
the time. But yeah, it's definitely like character and story based, and when you decide to use the camera in that way. The episode I'm shooting at the moment has definitely two halves, like static moments and calm moments, and you're with the operator, and then it has another moment that you're on a ticking clock, as it were. So we do we
Mm-hmm.
do we do that throughout the series.
The fight scene that's in the forest just outside the farm or whatever, like towards the end of the film. The other thing that I was curious about is if you guys had any difficulties with lighting and continuity issues. I feel like what you said about the jet probably was playing out in that forest where you guys are shooting at different times based on where the light was, unless you guys are using external lights. Because I felt like I noticed them coming from different areas, but my next short film will be shot in a forest, and so I'm curious, like if there's things that I need to be looking out for as well.
Well, when we shot that sequence, right, in that episode, we had, I can't remember exactly, Vic, but I think it was around about 7 days to film the farmhouse sequence,
Mm-hmm.
from start to finish. And that fell in Budapest in around September, October time last year. And the reality of like having the same light every day for those 7 days is, at that time of year, it's coming in, it's sort of, autumn going into winter or whatever. It's unrealistic. So
Mm-hmm.
we would plan our day as best we could to always shoot with the sun as a backlight, and shoot
Okay.
one direction in the morning and then another direction in the reverse directions in the afternoon. So that means you're into block shooting your scenes. We'll shoot whole bunch of scenes, let's say 4 or 5 scenes, shooting one way, and then turn around and do the reverse for those scenes in the afternoon. And then sometimes, if the during the middle of the day the sun's not so favorable because it's quite toppy, we would go and find, or we would schedule some scenes to shoot interiors, like inside the barn or inside the house. And that's kind of how we went about our day. On the days that were overcast, and there were some that were rainy, it's just trying to find the most creative way to get around it so that the shots still match the scene. So if they're
Mm-hmm.
tighter shots, I'll light them. Um, if they're wider shots, you just kind of got to go with the flow. And I think when you get into an action sequence like that, the audience is so engrossed in what's happening, and hopefully they're not. paying too much attention to one shot is in sun and then the next shot looks like it's slightly overcast. Hopefully, we're
Right.
doing our job to make sure that they blend as seamlessly as possible. And like
Hmm.
you watch it, I watch it, or whatever. I know what shots we did in the rain with a cover over the actors, and I know what shots we did in the sunlight. But hopefully, they all blend together and work as one scene. So that becomes the challenge of the location like that over a certain amount of time, and this scene that runs through, two-thirds of the episode or whatever it might be. I think when we did the explosion of the house, it was raining heavily, compared to previous shots and scenes were like full sun. So we
Hmm.
just have to make it work the best we can. And sometimes they help out with a little bit of visual effects. Where it becomes evident is in things like contrast. So maybe
Yeah.
you can help out a little bit in the grade and things like that. But it's just a little mix of everything, right? It's just like a little recipe to try and
Hmm.
make sure it all works over those 7 days of filming.
Yeah.
Because you are going to get weather variations.
Hmm.
But we tried to follow the backlight theory as much as possible. It doesn't always work out like that. You can't have every shot perfectly backlit because the schedule doesn't allow for it, but you can
Yeah.
try your best to schedule it that way if the actors are on board, and certainly the director was. From his background of cinematography, he was the one driving it as well. So when you've got a group of people that are on board to working that way, you can come up with some epic stuff, I think.
Hmm. The sun with the backlighting, it was that noticeable even inside of the forest. Like, was the forest um, not dense enough to like kind of hide that stuff? Like, it was pretty noticeable.
Yeah, we put a bunch of lights up on the top ridge. I think for that location, the access was not great at the top of the ridge, at the top of the forest where Reese and the Alpha team come from.
Yeah.
But we could get some M90s up there. I think we put a bunch of ARRI M90s up there, and that would give us a hard edge if it was overcast. But we tried to employ the same theory there. The difference was we had like two units. So I was shooting the main unit, and very luckily, I was able to team up with my younger brother, who's also a cinematographer, and he
Mm.
shot the second unit for me at that location and did an amazing job. And we worked between the two of us and our ADs and our directors to always try and chase the backlight. Yeah, we would bring in lights when we could, especially on an overcast day.
So then I'm assuming the that super cool shot with the shadow of the tomahawk coming up, was that with a light shining on there?
Yeah, that was one of those shots that it's such a key moment, and
Hmm.
we had been working towards that for a long time. And inevitably, as you do, sometimes the day you falls behind, and I was like, oh man, really got to get this shot with Reese and the tomahawk or whatever, and I was like, I've got to get it. And by the time we got up there, the sun had pretty much gone down already. So we lit it, and I think it works really well.
Wow. Even like in the background, you just got other lights kind of casting as if the sun is up in this direction.
Yeah, the electrical team did an amazing job. I would have loved to have done it earlier in the day, but that particular day we got a little bit snowed under, and we lit it, and it looks great. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, what you're saying about the weather inconsistencies, that's the biggest thing that I'm worried about for my film, because it's all outside, but it's also wintertime. I need it to be like, so we're shooting it up in the mountains and it'll be snowy by this time, more than likely. I mean, it's in Truckee,
Yeah,
California, so it's like there should be snow in January. But the thing that I'm worried about is that like it could be blue skies, it could be overcast, it could be all of that, plus it could be snowing on and off while we're doing it. And I'm just like, dude, and I also don't know how much light is even going to make it into the forest. So I'm just like, that's the biggest what if for me when shooting this, and I just have no idea what to expect.
it's a tricky one, and I think that's the fear we all go in with, especially when we've got a huge amount of time in one location, is continuity and consistency. But I think, the audience believe to a huge extent what you tell them. If your wides are in the right lighting space. Once you get in for the close-ups, if you are able to light them or whatever, people already have that mindset because of what you've shown them at the start of the
Yeah.
scene. The wide is in sun, and then if you can cheat the close-ups or you can cheat the mediums or whatever it might be, and maybe they're a little bit overcast or whatever. But if you do have a light and you can give them a little edge, that's all it takes to sell it, you know.
So it's funny that you bring that up because I noticed this a lot in just TV series, movies, all that. But I feel like it's probably something only people who are interested in cinematography will notice, and that's so. For example, when Ben is bleeding out in the barn and Reese is like stitching him up, the lighting changes, and it seems like on like the close-ups, depending on where the camera's at, maybe there's like a negative fill put in there, or maybe the lighting is just switch. So now we're like shadow side here, it's dramatic here, then a wide, and then you see like now he's lit on this side. And it's not something that I noticed on the first one. It's something I noticed on the second watch because I'm thinking cinematography questions. And so I wanted to ask you, is that just negative fill, or are you guys, moving around lights all the time? But also, what makes you decide to do that versus other scenes where you might not be doing that?
I mean, I think that's something we went and shot during the middle of the day while we were waiting for the sun to move around somewhere else. So what we did was it's an exterior set build, and we did that with a negative fill, or we wrapped one side of the barn in Duvetine, and then with our lighting cranes pushed the light through as if it was the sun, so it could what I didn't want to have to do is because we were going to be there for a few hours shooting that is to worry about the sunlight moving through the cracks and changing the
Mm-hmm.
lighting.
Yeah.
So we were able to control it by doing a negative on one side and then putting a lighting crane in. So basically blocking out the sun and trying to control as much of it as you can, and then putting our own sunlight in. And then when it comes to that's for the wides, and then when it comes to the close-ups, I'll typically move that negative in now inside. I'll still keep the one that's wrapped around the outside of the building, but then bring something more local, closer to the cast member, and then also introduce some more light. Quite often, what ends up happening is shooting different angles. I'm like a believer in, you know, it's the actors have to look the best they possibly can. So sometimes that means that the shadow side might change in a scene, the light direction might slightly change in a direction of a scene, but light can come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different um, ways of lighting for different stories, and some take a more naturalistic approach. In this series, I think there's definitely a cross between naturalism and a cinematic vision, and I think with that, it enables you to have a license to bring light from slightly different areas and really make sure that the actors look the best they possibly can. So sometimes that means the light moves around a little bit
Yeah.
just because it does. But again, hopefully, like when they watch that first pass, like yourself, no one's really picking up on that. They're just
Right.
hopefully taking in that the lighting's working in the right way.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we do scenes where the light direction does change sides on the actor's face, but try and get away with it if you can.
Yeah. It because that was another thing that I'd been considering for my film. I'm worried enough about being able to knock out the whole script in like the 3 or 4 days that we're doing it. But I was like, gosh, should I, get a negative fill for the close-ups because it's supposed to be a dark comedy, and when things get serious, I would love some more harsh shadows. And if we're in the snowy area, it's just going to be so bright. I would
Right.
imagine with the light reflecting up. But I was like, I also don't want to get slowed down and then, worry about the continuity of like when I shoot a wide and now they don't have the shadow. And so I just like was getting way too in my head about that stuff.
That's okay. That happens with us, and it happened, and you pointed it out, and we just talked about it. It happens, sometimes there's because you can't get the negative fill in so close in the wide, but once you get in for the close up, you really want to create that contrast and that shape, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to. I think once you get into the close up, if you can and you're able to, is light for that.
Yeah.
You want your actor to look the best in the close up. If it doesn't really match the continuity of the wide, so be it. The wide's the wide. You have to light the space.
Yeah.
Once you get in, certainly if you can, I think bring in some negative fill to create some shape and contrast is a good thing. And then that might also mean bringing, in my case, only because we have the ability to financially, is bring some up the lights in closer as well on the
Hmm.
key light side, and that's how it ends up changing. You go from a more rounded light to a more contrasty light in the close-ups, but
Yeah.
if they look good that way, I would definitely do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's decided. I'm gonna gonna get a negative
Yeah,
fill.
it's nice. I
um,
think it's worthwhile having. It's good. It's a good
yeah.
piece of equipment.
Yeah. Well, it was actually funny because when I shot my first short film, we're in the desert, and there's just this scene where the guy who looks like he's stalking this person, pops up into the frame. So now it's like an over the shoulder. But I was like, man, I really need a negative fill right now because he's so bright. And I was like, he should feel like a dark character. And we didn't have one. So I just had my camera back up. And we had like, he had to hit his mark perfectly on the ground. And so we did it like 10 times. And just my backpack up is the thing, casting the shadow on him. But yeah, so I don't want to run into that again.
Sometimes you just got to use what you've got available to you, don't you?
Yeah.
Like whatever the tool might be. It was on Dark Wolf. We were doing the preparation sequences for Ben when he's building the bomb and
Hmm.
the IEDs on the road for when the guys approach. And we shot that in the rain, but some of it in the rain. And I remember going to shoot the particular piece where he places the one on the road, and it was like a last minute thing, right? It's like, okay, let's grab the camera and go and shoot this piece with Ben now, because or Taylor, who's absolutely amazing. But we went down there and shot it, and I didn't have time to get any lighting stuff down. The guys were moving location to somewhere else, and it was raining heavily, and I think, the wider shot was what it was, but once we moved into the close-up, I didn't even have a piece of poly. So I think I asked the guys to grab the slate or a space blanket or whatever they had on the camera cart, and we just used that as the fill light.
Mm. You're
Just
just
to get
bouncing the
something
light
into
onto him.
bouncing the light onto him, but just to get something in the eyes because we didn't have anything available to us. So I think, like similar, what I'm saying is like similar to your case. It's like it doesn't matter what the show is. Sometimes you just got to grab what you got to grab, and if
Yeah.
it gets you that result, do it. So if it's a backpack to do some negative, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then you just have to block out the thoughts of your actor, Taylor in this case, being like, really? That's it? That's all you're going to like me with?
Yeah, but well, do you know what? Like, he's such a good dude, and I built a really good relationship with him. And he was like super cool with us. He's really friendly for camera and lighting. He understands what's going on, and we certainly around camera, he has a really great relationship with everybody. I mean, he does with everybody, but for us, he's fantastic. So when you're choosing the right lens for him or the right light for him. Sometimes you can talk him through it if you need to. Other times you obviously don't need to. But like in that situation, as long as I could get a little bit of light in the eyes, he was happy, and we made him look good, I think, and that was it.
Yeah. When you say get a little bit of light in the eyes, you just mean like that reflection so you can kind of see like where, people are looking a little bit. Gotcha. So they don't look
Yeah,
so
you
like
you
dead.
could exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can get that little glint in the eyes, that
Hmm.
that that means a lot,
Okay.
because otherwise, like, it's exactly like what you said, they go a bit dead in the eyes, right? They just go a little
Yeah.
bit black, and if you can get that little sparkle or just that little bit of highlight in their eye, um, does wonders for them and for the camera as well. So always trying to get something in the eyes as much as you can. It's not always possible, especially like when you're doing the wider stuff. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But certainly once you come in for a close up, if you want to get some light in the eyes.
I definitely expected when you were saying you didn't have, like the lights available that you were going to say you just shined an iPhone light on them. I was like, no way.
No, we didn't get into the iPhone, but it wants to be something that's the other thing about like an eye light. You don't want it to take over the light.
Hmm.
You don't want it to relight their face,
Yeah.
but you just need it to dig out the eyes and bring some shape there, without rounding off the face, too much, or making it look too flat, basically. But
Yeah, I'm always guilty of. I think I was even doing this on Alien Earth when I was watching it during close ups, looking at the reflections in their eyes and trying to figure out where they're hiding lights. I think I was doing that actually when
yeah,
Haverford and and Ben are talking in, like his house, that will,
Oh, in the house,
like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was a challenge. It was a very intense scene,
Hmm.
and we wanted to shoot it in a way that was as free for the actors as possible. So I think we ended up shooting like three or four cameras, which seems kind of crazy now because there's a small space and essentially two people sat at a table. But um, Paul was like, when we were prepping that scene, he's like, I really think this is a great scene to shoot with four cameras. So I was like, okay, cool. Now I've got to light it because you're shooting different directions or multiple angles at the same time, and putting four cameras on a person or two people maybe means you have to make compromises in lighting, but we were able to hide lights in certain places down low or
Hmm.
above or whatever, and we could just get that kind of shape on them,
Yeah.
and drive light from the windows outside, so still able to get a good exposure and a nice light and shoot multi cameras, which gave the actors the freedom to do their thing, and we weren't changing setup regularly. We got the
Yeah.
scene in a pretty good amount of time actually that day.
Hmm. So that
Yeah.
scene is being shot with four cameras. I'm curious, with that explosion scene, how many cameras did you guys set up? Because I mean, that's probably a one and done. Not gonna throw
That's a
another
one and
house there.
done. That's a one
Yeah.
and done. Yeah, we spent a lot of time planning that. I can't remember what the exact count was, but I think it's around about 9 or 10 on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I was guessing
Um,
maybe six. When something like that happens, it seems like they play the same part a couple times of the
yeah,
explosion.
they double cut it, don't they?
Yeah, they're like, we spent so much money on this, we got to play it multiple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, we got to make sure we see it a couple of times. Yeah,
Yeah.
we shot that. I'm pretty sure it was 9 or 10 from memory. We had
Wow.
five five Sony Venice 2s, which was the main camera for that show. Five of those. I'm pretty sure we had two or three Sony FX3s, and then maybe one or two more. But and then the drone.
Hmm.
I think that was about it. Yeah, yeah. We sort of picked the places where we thought they were going to look the best. Speaking to the special effects guys and how big they think the explosion is going to be, and all that kind of stuff, and try and plan our cameras for that.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I'm curious, when you're not shooting these massive shows, what's your camera at home? Like, what do you shoot with on your own?
Probably my iPhone most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm a dad now, so
Mm,
I'm shooting on my iPhone. I have a Leica M9. I love shooting on that. I have a whole bunch of stuff. Small Pentax film cameras. Every once in a while they still come out.
yeah.
I just pick up whatever I've got to hand. I've got a collection of little bits and pieces, but really these days now with the kids and everything, it's an iPhone, or I'm going to miss the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that.
It's hard for me at the moment. When I'm away so much for work,
Hmm.
that when I get back, I just really fully immerse myself in my family again, which I have to do, and
Yeah.
that inevitably ends up being the iPhone as the main tool.
Hmm. Well, that's beautiful, and I would be remiss if I didn't say just the way that you set up your Zoom call in your hotel room or wherever you're at right now. The symmetry is
Symmetry,
perfect,
yeah.
and yeah, it just all looks great. I can tell you're a DP.
Well, that's important. That's one of the considerations, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This was really fascinating, and I can't wait to see what you are doing on season 2 of The Terminal List.
Thanks, Vic. It's been great chatting to you. Really appreciate it.